The Saudi Pro League has grown significantly over the last couple of seasons, with players like Neymar and Ronaldo joining the league amongst countless others. One thing they can't get though is the UEFA Champions League. So for this experiment, I have moved the top 4 Saudi clubs to the top 4 European leagues to see if any of them can lift the Champions League. Hey, how's it going, and welcome to this experiment video where I've taken the top 4 Saudi clubs and I've put them in the top 4 European leagues. So this will be a 15-year experiment. Give these teams enough time to see if they can win any of their respective leagues, but also, most importantly, can they do something in the Champions League as well? So obviously, in real life, Saudi Arabian clubs are spending massive money and paying ridiculous wages for some players. But now that I've put them into the European leagues, the FFP will come into play now, and this big spending, all these massive wages, might have to come to an end. But they will of course get more money now playing in their respective leagues in terms of the TV prize money, and of course they just need to distribute their wages more efficiently, and we could see a Saudi superpower here in Europe. So the top 4 leagues are the Premier League, of course, La Liga, the Bundesliga and the Serie A. So the team in the Premier League is Al Hilal. I sorted it out from reputation, so the highest reputation Saudi club, Al Hilal, are in the highest reputation league, the Premier League, and so on. So Al Hilal in the Premier League. In terms of their season preview for season 1 here, they're predicted to finish 8th in the league with 50-1 to win the league title. So I guess it wouldn't be completely out of question to see Al Hilal qualify for the Champions League in the first season. I think they've got the easiest and the hardest out of all the 4 clubs here, because they're going to get the Premier League money, they're going to attract the players to the Premier League, but also they've got to overtake teams such as Man City, Liverpool and Arsenal if they want to win the league or do anything in the Champions League as well. In terms of their best player, well, of course, that is Neymar, and apparently he is the 5th best player in the Premier League now. In terms of La Liga, we've got the second biggest Saudi club, and that is Al Ittihad. Of course, Benzema plays for them these days. They're predicted to finish 10th in the league with a 200-1 to win the league title, so it seems unlikely they'll win the league title. And their best player apparently is N'Golo Conte. They've also got Fabinho and of course Benzema as well back in La Liga. Be interested to see what he'll do there. Third in the list is the Bundesliga, and we've got Al Ahly in the Bundesliga. And they're predicted to finish 8th in the league with 50-1 to win the league title again. But look at that, look at the odds here. So Al Ahly could easily qualify for the Champions League in the first season. And their best player is of course Riyad Mahrez, formerly of Man City. They've also got Frank Kessie at the club as well. And in the Serie A, we've got Al Nassr, of course, Cristiano Ronaldo's club these days. And we look at their season preview. They're predicted to finish 7th in the league with a 25-1 odds to win the league title. So Al Ittihad have the lowest season preview with a 10th in the league media prediction. So it'd be highly unlikely any of these clubs get relegated in the first season. Hopefully none of the clubs get relegated in any of the seasons, and hopefully they can free up a surprise or two and win some silverware. In terms of Al Nassr's best player, well, it should be Ronaldo, I should imagine. Well, apparently it isn't. Apparently the best player is Brozovic, but they've also got Aymeric Laporte at the club as well. So obviously all these clubs, these 4 clubs, have some good players at their teams, but in terms of the other players in their teams, not really up to scratch. And also, of course, all these clubs have moved now to Europe, so that means 4 teams, 1 from each league, has taken their place in Saudi Arabia. And those 4 teams are the 4 teams who had the lowest reputation in their league. So we've got Luton, Las Palmas, Frosinone and Darmstadt all playing in Saudi Arabia now. As you can see, they're the major clubs. So for the sake of this experiment, Al Hilal are English, Al Ittihad are Spanish, Al Ahly are German, and Al Nassr are Italian. So they haven't really got any ties to the nation of Saudi Arabia anymore. So for that reason as well, they've got to meet the league's requirements for the homegrown status as well. So they have to go out and sign some English players, some Italian players, and see what they can do. So of course, in this experiment, the most important thing is, will any of these clubs win the Champions League? But I'll also be keeping an eye on the transfers as well, seeing which of these clubs pay the big bucks. And let's see how they'll do after the first season. So after 1 season, unfortunately, Al Hilal did quite poorly, really. Predicted to finish 8th in the league, I think it was. They finished 11th in the Premier League in their first season with just 52 points. They were already 5 points behind Man United in 8th place and 7 points behind Aston Villa in 7th place. But 11th in the league for them is not really that great, to be honest. They did, however, get to the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, where unfortunately they lost quite convincingly in the second leg to Man City. They actually won the first leg away 2-1 against Man City. Then they lost at home to them 4-0 in the second leg. So almost got to the first final in the first season, Al Hilal. Definitely some promising signs, but 11th in the league isn't really good enough. To La Liga now, and Al Ittihad have had a much better season. They finished 5th in the league, 11 points behind Atletico Madrid in 4th place, so quite a big gap from them and the Champions League positions. They also finished off with an even goal difference, which wasn't very nice, but all in all, 5th in the league for Al Ittihad is quite nice. They're qualified for next season's Europa League, so they are the first team to be played in the European continental competitions. Into the Bundesliga now, and Al Ahly had a good season as well. They finished 6th in the league with 50 points, and they also are playing in the Europa League for next season. Into Serie A, and Al Nassr didn't do too well, unfortunately. They finished 10th in the league as well with 52 points. However, they are the first team to get to a final here in Europe. They got to the Italian Cup final, where unfortunately they lost to Lazio 2-1 in the final. Sadio Mane on the score sheet for them in that game. So in the first season, nothing too bad has happened. Obviously, Al Hilal finished 11th in the league, a bit disappointing. They did get to a cup semi-final though. Also, Al Nassr finished 10th in the league, but they got to the Italian Cup final. And of course, Al Ittihad finishing in the Europa League places, as of Al Ahly as well, both for next season. So quite a promising first season here for the Saudi clubs. Well, only one season played, already some big transfers to talk of. Al Ahly have been especially very busy. They bought Pierre Kalaloulou from AC Milan for £56 million in total. That was actually the biggest transfer fee paid for any player in their first window, the summer transfer window. Also, Ian Atcher went to Al Ittihad for £30 million. Kefren Turan went to Al Nassr. Carl Walker-Peters went to Al Hilal. Somerville went to Al Nassr as well. And so, yeah, many transfers that happened already in the first season, already starting to build up their squads. And in the January transfer window, the biggest one went to Al Hilal. Tanguy Nianzou went from Sevilla to Al Hilal for £32.5 million. So the first season is done. 2 teams are playing in Europa League for next season. 1 team got to the Italian Cup final. What will season 2 bring though? Well, into season 2, and Al Hilal had a much better season this time round. They finished 7th in the league, qualifying for the Europa League for next season. Also, Alexander Mitrovic, top goal scorer in the Premier League with 22 goals. So into La Liga, and Al Ittihad unfortunately finished outside the top 7 for the season. They finished 8th in the league. Well, level on points with Sociedad and level goal difference, but they just missed out on qualifying for a European competition for next season. They did, however, compete in the Europa League this season. And how did they do? Well, not amazing. They got to the round of 16, where unfortunately they got knocked out to Atlanta. Well, into the Serie A, and unfortunately Al Nassr, with by far the worst season of any club so far. They finished 16th in the league with just 41 points, only 6 points clear of the relegation zone. So really poor that from Al Nassr. They did get to the Italian Cup final last season. This season, though, it doesn't seem like they did. Well, this season they got knocked down in the Italian Cup first round. So yeah, very poor season from Al Nassr. 16th in the league, and also not getting past the Italian Cup first round. The manager these days as well is Vincent Kompany. Into the Bundesliga, and Al Ahly have had another successful season. The first team that will be competing in the Champions League in season 3. They finished 4th in the league with 54 points. Way off the top 3 in the league, but they've qualified for next season's Champions League. They also competed in the Europa League for this season. How did they do? Well, they went one further than Al Ittihad. They got to the quarter-final, but they got knocked out to Atlanta as well. So Atlanta knocked out both Al Ittihad and Al Ahly in the Europa League. So that's kind of disappointing. But they are the first team to be playing Champions League football for next season. Probably the least known of the 4 clubs as well. But they are the first team to qualify for next season's Champions League. Well, in terms of transfers for this season in the summer, Al Hilal definitely the busiest club of the 4. They had the 3 biggest signings of the season in terms of those 4 clubs. Badiashile joined from Chelsea for £51 million. Tyler Adams joined from Bournemouth for £39.5 million. And also Baldanzi, who's a class player, joined from Empoli for £37 million. So Al Ahly are the first team competing in the Champions League for next season. How will they do? Let's find out. Well, into season 3, and Al Hilal with another disappointing season, unfortunately. They finished 10th in the league with 52 points. Joint 8th place effectively with Aston Villa and Bournemouth, but they finished down in 10th due to their goal difference. They also have a managerial vacancy at the moment, so their manager, of course, got sacked for a poor performance in this season. How do they do in the Europa League, though? Wow, they actually got to the Europa League final, Al Hilal, where they lost, unfortunately, to Atletico Madrid 2-1. So the second final we've seen so far in the experiment video here, and the first European final as well. Mitrovic on the score sheet in the final, and Nianzou unfortunately got sent off late on, so they lost the Europa League final, which is very disappointing, but it's good the fact that they got there. In terms of La Liga, Al Ittihad again playing continental football next season. They finished 6th in the league with a -2 goal difference, but it doesn't really matter. They finished 6th in the league again with 57 points. In the Serie A, and Al Nassr finished 10th in the league with just 55 points, but as you can see there, they have qualified for the Europa League, so I'm guessing they have won the Italian Cup, and is that the first piece of silverware in the experiment here? They've already got to the Italian Cup final. They got to the Italian Cup final again. Last time they faced Lazio. This time they faced their fierce rivals Rome, and they beat them 2-1. 2 goals from Nicola Pepe, Arsenal's forgotten man, in that final, and the first piece of silverware has come in the experiment, unlikely as well, to Al Nassr. They've arguably been the poorest of the 4 teams so far, finishing 16th last season and 10th this season, but they've already been to 2 cup finals, and this time they have won one of them. Into the Bundesliga now, and unfortunately Al Ahly have failed to qualify for a continental competition for the first time. They finished 8th in the league, just 3 points behind Bayer Leverkusen in 7th place. They did compete in the Champions League though, however. How did they get on in the Champions League? Well, unfortunately, they got knocked out in the knockout playoff round by Real Betis, 4-3 on aggregate there. They got through the league phase though, which is nice. Betis, of course, are a decent team, but they got knocked down in the knockout playoff round, unfortunately. Well, to the transfers now, and in the summer, Al Ittihad were the biggest signing of the summer. They signed Unai Simon from Athletic Bilbao for £64 million. As I said, these teams are all playing in their respective nations now. They have to adhere to the registration rules in terms of the homegrown players, so it's no real surprises to see Al Ittihad paying big money for a Spanish goalkeeper from Athletic Bilbao there. Also, Al Ahly signed Julian Weigl from Gladbach, the same idea there as well. Reiss Nelson joined them from Arsenal as well. Other than that, not really any big signings to talk of. Al Hilal haven't really spent big in this season. Let's go forward to season 4 now then. Let's see what happens in the 4th season. Into season 4 now, and unfortunately Al Hilal with another disappointing season. They finished 9th in the league with just 53 points, 8 points behind Aston Villa in 8th place. They did, however, get to another final, this time the FA Cup final. Obviously, they got to the Europa League final last season, losing that. They lost the FA Cup final 1-0 to Chelsea, unfortunately. Into La Liga now, and Al Ittihad with another 5th place finish. They finished 5th with 66 points, just 4 points behind Villarreal in 4th place there. And also, unfortunately, in the Europa League, they got knocked down in the round of 16 to Rennes, 3-1 on aggregate. Into the Serie A, and Al Nassr with their best season so far to date in terms of league finish. Of course, they're the first team to win a competition, winning the Italian Cup last season. They finished 7th in the league with 60 points, just 4 points behind Fiorentina in 4th place. They will be playing Europa League football for next season. They played in the Europa League this season as well, where unfortunately they got knocked down in the round of 16, this time to Newcastle, 3-1 on aggregate. They were also in the Super Cup final, but unfortunately lost to Inter Milan 3-1 in that final. So they like a final. They like a domestic final, Al Nassr. They also got to the Italian Cup semi-final as well, but unfortunately they got knocked out to Sampdoria. Wow, into the Bundesliga, and Al Ahly with the highest finish of any team so far in the league. They finished 3rd in the league with 66 points. Just 10 points off RB Leipzig, who won the league title. So great from Al Ahly. Great start from them in the first 4 seasons here. They also won their first piece of silverware as well. They beat Borussia Dortmund on penalties in the German Cup final. So 1 German Cup now for Al Ahly and 1 Italian Cup for Al Nassr. So the top 2 teams, Al Hilal and Al Ittihad, yet to win a competition. But Al Hilal have been to 2 finals, one of them the Europa League final and 1 the FA Cup final as well. Well, in terms of big spenders for this window, it definitely goes to Al Ittihad. They have got the 4 highest transfers in terms of the top 4 Saudi clubs here. They signed Paulinho from Fulham for £62 million. They also signed Gonçalves and Trincao, both from Sporting Lisbon, for both £57 million apiece as well. And they also signed Hjulmand from Sporting Lisbon for £44.5 million. So it seems like Al Ittihad are very happy raiding Sporting Lisbon and Portuguese players in general. I think they forget that they're playing in Spain, not Portugal. But anyway, those are the players they have signed. Spent a lot of money, Al Ittihad. And in terms of the January transfer window, that goes to Al Hilal. They spent big money. They signed Trossard from Inter Milan for £62 million. They also signed Rico Lewis from Man City, again an English player, so that's great for their homegrown status. They signed him for £34.5 million only. That's a bargain, that is. And they also signed Calvin Phillips from Man City as well for £21.5 million. They also sold Otavio to Aston Villa for £53 million. So into season 5 now, already had 2 competition winners, 2 domestic cup trophies. Can we see anyone lift a European trophy in season 5? Before we get started with the results for season 5, guys, please remember that if you do like this video, to hit that like button for me. It's very important for the video success. And also, if you're new around here and you want to see more from me, do hit that subscribe button as well. It'd really help me out and it's much appreciated. So into season 5, and Al Hilal with another good finish this season. They finished 6th in the league with 68 points, just outside the Champions League places by 1 point behind Man United. They have also got to their 3rd different final so far, Al Hilal, and this time they have won their first piece of silverware. They got to the Carabao Cup final where they beat Aston Villa 3-2 in that game. So only Al Ittihad, the only team who haven't won a competition now. The 3 other teams have all won domestic cup competitions, so we're just waiting on Al Ittihad to win something. They may have won something this year, we shall see. But Al Hilal with a good season, 6th in the league, and their first trophy in the Carabao Cup. Into La Liga and Al Ittihad with a 7th place finish this season. So they're very, very consistent, Al Ittihad. They're always around the top 7 sort of mark. They've qualified for 4 out of 5 Europa League places, I think, in the this experiment so far. So they're doing quite well. 63 points, but with a plus 22 goal difference. That is very nice. They were playing in the Europa League this season as well, of course, but unfortunately they're out in the round of 16 again. This time they lost 3-0 in aggregate to Brighton. Into Serie A and Al Nassr with another poor season, unfortunately, finishing down in 12th in the league with just 46 points. They did, however, go far in the Europa League. They got to the Europa League semi-final, but unfortunately they lost that 4-3 in aggregate to Aston Villa. So Al Nassr, a bit of a funny one so far. They've done quite well in the other competitions, but in terms of the Serie A, they have not done so well so far, finishing 12th. They've also finished as low as 16th in the league, but they have won the Italian Cup so far. They've also got to the Europa League semi-final and got to another Italian Cup final as well. So in other competitions they're doing really well, but in terms of the Serie A finishes, not the best so far for Al Nassr. In terms of the Bundesliga, unfortunately Al Ahly missing out on European football this time round. They finished 8th in the league with 49 points, just 3 points behind Union Berlin in 5th place, but the league don't lie, they just missed out in terms of European football for next season. They are the only team to compete in the Champions League so far though, their 2nd time in the Champions League, but this time, unfortunately, they couldn't even get out the league phase. So we've had Al Ahly in the Champions League twice so far, no other teams competed in it yet, but they've only got to the knockout playoff round once and been knocked out in the league phase. Well, in terms of big money spent in season 5, again it goes to Al Hilal. They signed Samuel Illing from Juventus for £69 million. They also signed young wonder kid Joral Hato as well from Ajax for £53 million. And Al Ittihad signed Carlos Perez from Celta Vigo for £49.5 million. Al Hilal also signed Nico Volaf from Bayern Munich for £40.5 million in January. He is a new regen, already got 1 cap for Germany. So Al Hilal spending big money, trying to build their squad as much as possible. They have won a competition though. They won the Carabao Cup this season. Also, Al Ahly and Al Nassr have also won a cup competition as well. But Al Ittihad, the only team yet to win a competition. Will they do that in season 6? Let's find out. Well, into season 6, and Al Hilal with a very disappointing season. They finished 11th in the league with just 53 points. But as you can see there, they've qualified for the Champions League. So that means only one thing. They have gone one further they did in the past, and they have won the Europa League this season. Yeah, if you look at this, they got to the Europa League final already, Al Hilal. This time, though, they've won the competition. They beat OGC Nice on penalties in the final. They also got to the Carabao Cup final again, but this time they lost to Man City 1-0, unfortunately. But that means that after just 6 seasons, Al Hilal have already been in 5 finals. They've won 2 of them, the Europa League and the Carabao Cup. They lost the other 3 finals, but a poor season from them in the league, 11th in the league, but they also got to 2 finals, winning the Europa League and losing the Carabao Cup. And also that is the first European trophy for any of the teams so far. Not quite the Champions League, but the Europa League is very nice as well. Into La Liga and Al Ittihad are the other team to qualify for the Champions League this season. Before this season, only Al Ahly have qualified for it, but now next season, Al Hilal and Al Ittihad will both be playing in the Champions League. They finished 4th in the league with 68 points, just above Villarreal in 5th place. They also had a decent Europa League run this season. Of course, they didn't win the competition because Al Hilal did, but they got to the quarter-final where unfortunately they lost to OGC Nice 4-0, the team Al Hilal beat in the final. So Al Ittihad still yet to win a competition, the only team yet to win one yet, but They are playing Champions League football for the first time next season, and to be honest, they have been the most consistent team in terms of their league finishes so far. Into the Serie A, and Al Nassr again with a very disappointing season. This time they finished 11th in the league with just 45 points. They also got knocked out in the Italian Cup second round, so a season to forget for Al Nassr. Into the Bundesliga though, and Al Ahly, another consistent team in their league finishes. They finished 5th in the league this season with 60 points, 5 points behind Wolfsburg in 4th place. Al Hilal, again the big spenders in the summer. They signed Runsley Antonia from PSG for £79 million. He is an incredible looking regen, only 20 years of age, a regular starter for Al Hilal, so they have spent big money on him. Obviously, they got big hopes for him. They have also signed Benaka from AC Milan for £45.5 million. So let's go forward now to season 7. We've got 2 teams competing in the Champions League next season. Al Hilal, who have just won the Europa League, and Al Ittihad. Well, season 7, Al Hilal with their greatest finish in the Premier League so far. They finished 4th in the league, and they'll be playing Champions League football again next season. They got 75 points, just 12 points behind Man City, top of the league. Also, how do they do in the Champions League this season? Also, look at that. The manager of Al Hilal these days is Kevin Nolan, which is very, very bizarre, but good for him. Good for him. In terms of the Champions League, they did get through the league phase, but unfortunately, they got knocked out to PSG 4-3 in the round of 16. But they will be playing in the Champions League again for next season, so they're making a little bit of a habit of it so far, Al Hilal. And of course, they have won 2 competitions already in this experiment video. In La Liga now, and Al Ittihad unfortunately have fallen down a little bit. They finished 7th in the league this season with 61 points, but they will be still playing Europa League football for next season. They also compete in the Champions League. How did they get on? Well, they went one further than Al Hilal in the Champions League. They actually got through to the quarter-final, which is very nice. But unfortunately, they met Arsenal and they lost 3-1 on aggregate there. They also got to the Spanish Cup semi-final, but they fell at that point to Real Madrid 4-0 or 4-1 on aggregate, unfortunately. But Al Ittihad with another good season, 7th in the league, playing Europa League football next season, and they also got to the Champions League quarter-final. They're still yet to win a competition, though. They're the only team yet to win a competition. Hopefully, that can get done very soon for them. Wow, into Serie A, and Al Nassr again finishing down in 16th place. So they're the team I'm most worried about in terms of being relegated. That is the second time they're finishing 16th, which is very annoying. They are 12 points clear of the relegation zone, so it wasn't really that too much of an issue for them, but they haven't done well so far, Al Nassr, in terms of their league finishes. They have won a competition in the Italian Cup, but other than that, they haven't done too well. Definitely the worst team so far in the experiment, although they have won a competition and Al Ittihad haven't. Wow, into the Bundesliga, and Al Ahly with by far their worst finish of the experiment so far. They've been a consistent team up in the top 7, Al Ahly, but this season they finished 15th in the league, just 1 point clear of Werder Bremen in the relegation zone. So Al Ahly just surviving from the skin of their teeth in this season. Al Ahly and Al Nassr really got us sweating a little bit in terms of getting relegated. And Al Ahly, out of the norm for them, they've been very inconsistent so far in the experiment. They're also competing in the Europa League this season, but unfortunately they couldn't even make it past the knockout playoff round, losing convincingly to Fenerbahce 3-0 on aggregate. So 2 poor seasons really for Al Ahly and Al Nassr. Al Hilal, however, though, have got their highest finish so far of the season, finishing 4th in the Premier League and are playing Champions League football again back-to-back for next season. Not too many big signings to talk of in the summer of this window here, but the biggest one was Julio Enciso, who went from Man United to Al Hilal for £34.5 million. In terms of January, though, again, Al Hilal with the biggest money spent. They spent £51 million on Adam Asnou from Al Ettifaq, who of course are still playing in Saudi Arabia. Adam Asnou is not actually a player I've heard of. I should have heard of him though, because he looks quite good. He's Spanish, and he has been playing for Al Ettifaq, of course. He starts off his career at Bayern Munich on the game. So, going forward to Season 8 now, Al Hilal are really starting to grow now. Finished 4th in the league this season. They also won the Europa League. Can they do well in next season's Champions League? Let's find out. Well, into Season 8, and Al Hilal really starting to steamroll now. They finished 5th in the league this season, but due to the coefficients, they've qualified for the Champions League again for next season. So that'll be 3 seasons in a row playing Champions League football. How did they get on, though, in the Champions League this season? Well, they actually did really well in the Champions League this season. They got through to the semi-final, which is the best so far of anyone to date, where unfortunately they just lost to Barcelona 4-3. On aggregate there. So, of course, they've been the best so far in terms of the continental competitions. They've got to 2 Europa League finals. They won one of them, lost the other, and now they've got through to the Champions League semi-final as well. So, really starting to look good now, Al Hilal really are. The Well, you look at the top goal scorers in the league, second and third are both Al Hilal players, Baldanzi, and that new region they've got Antonio as well. So doing really well, Al Hilal. In La Liga, and Al Ittihad with another good season. They finished third in the league this season with 71 points, an absolute mile away from the top two in Barcelona and Real Madrid. But third in the league is very nice, and they have qualified for next season's Champions League as well. Have they won a competition yet though? They won anything in the Spanish Cup? They are still yet to win a competition, unfortunately, Al Ittihad. They're doing well in the league though, and they also got to the Europa League quarter-final, where unfortunately they lost to Marseille. Wow, in terms of the Serie A, Al Nassr again with a very poor season. They finished down in 15th place with just 39 points. They're not doing much, Al Nassr, in Serie A, let's be honest. Been very underwhelming so far, Al Nassr. In the Bundesliga now, and Al Ahly just survived relegation last season. This season they did do much better. They finished 13th in the league with 36 points. It looked like they had a strong end to the season as well. Otherwise, they was in deep trouble in terms of being relegated. Just 1 point clear of Stuttgart in 16th place. I know that the 16th place play a team from the Bundesliga 2 for a playoff who gets relegated and who gets promoted. So Al Ahly just surviving again this season. So they've really fallen down a cliff, Al Ahly. Al Ahly and Al Nassr the last couple of seasons especially are not doing too well, but Al Hilal really come off strong now. They're qualified for next season's Champions League again for the third season in a row. Well, in terms of transfers for this season, it's been relatively quiet from the four teams here, but the biggest one was David Jurasek, who went from Benfica to Al Hilal for just £37 million. So Al Hilal are going into their third Champions League run in a row for next season. Can they go one step further and get to the Champions League final? Let's find out. Well, into the 9th season now, and Al Hilal continue to grow here in the experiment. They have finished in a Champions League spot for the 4th season in a row. They finished 4th in the league this time around with 76 points. How do they get on in the Champions League though? Well, unfortunately, it's nowhere near as good as last season when they got to the semi-final. This time, they couldn't get past the knockout playoff round, losing to Benfica on penalties in the that stage there. So that's really disappointing. And other than finishing 4th in the league, they haven't done too much in this season. In terms of the La Liga, Al Ittihad again being very consistent. They finished 5th in the league this time round with 69 points and qualifying for next season's Europa League. I'm pretty sure they played in the Champions League this season. They did. They went further than Al Hilal. They got through to the quarter-final, where unfortunately lost to AC Milan 4-1 on aggregate there. They also competed in their first final as well, Al Ittihad, but unfortunately lost the Super Cup final to Barcelona, so 3-1. So 9 seasons played in Al Ittihad, despite being very consistent in the La Liga. They are still yet to win a competition. Into Serie A, and Al Nassr, despite finishing 11th in the league, quite a promising sign for them. They've been lingering way too close to the relegation zone. At least they climbed the league a bit this season. 49 points for them. But still no more competition win for Al Nassr. They won the Italian Cup so far in the experiment, but other than that, they haven't done much at all. Into the Bundesliga, and Al Ahly are still struggling. Down in 13th place again, this time with 38 points. So they're in big danger of getting relegated, Al Ahly, if they continue this run of form. They started off the experiment very well, but the last 3 seasons they have just survived relegation to the Bundesliga 2. Well, in Season 9, by far the quietest any of the clubs have been in terms of the transfer windows. The highest money spent was actually from Al Ahly, who bought Manuel Gomez from Le Havre in France for just £24 million. So it seems like in Season 9 the money has dried up, but at the moment, 9 seasons deep, Al Hilal are by far the strongest team in the experiment. They are playing in their 4th Champions League campaign in a row for next season. But also Al Ittihad are still going strong, still consistently finishing in the top 7 in Spain, but they're still yet to win a competition. But Al Nassr and Al Ahly really are struggling now in the experiment. What will Season 10 bring though? Will it be the first competition win for Al Ittihad? And will Al Hilal go further in the Champions League, possibly get as far as the final? Well, Al Hilal have been going very strong the last few seasons in the Premier League and the Champions League, of course. And this season, they are the first team to win a domestic title. They have won the Premier League by 5 points over Man City. I think their highest position so far has been 3rd or 4th place. So a little bit surprising, but also the way they've been going in recent times, not that surprised about it. They are the first team to win a domestic title, doing really well, Al Hilal. They've now won the Carabao Cup, the Europa League, and the Premier League. But how did they get on in the Champions League, though? Well, again, unfortunately, in the Champions League, they got knocked out in the knockout playoff round, this time very comfortably 6-1 to Tottenham. They did, however, get to the Carabao Cup final again for the 3rd time, but unfortunately they lost again to Man City 3-2. They also got to the FA Cup final as well, where they lost 2-0 to Man United, unfortunately. So Al Hilal didn't do too well in the Champions League this season again. 2 back-to-back knockout playoff rounds defeat for them, but they came very close to a domestic treble. They won the Premier League, but unfortunately lost the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup final. In terms of Al Ittihad, well, not really a surprise. Again, a 6th place finish for them. Very consistent. They haven't really battled it out for the title yet, but they keep finishing in the top 7. They're still becoming a bit of a relevant team, that has to be said. 62 points for them. Unfortunately, they got knocked out in the Europa League round of 16, this time to Bayer Leverkusen on penalties. They got to their second final though, Al Ittihad, I think in successive seasons as well. But unfortunately, they lost 1-0 to Sevilla in the Spanish Cup final after extra time. So they're teasing us a little bit with their first trophy. Al Ittihad got to 2 finals in a row, but they're still yet to win a trophy. In Serie A, and Al Nassr seem to be turning a corner a little bit. They finished 10th in the league this season with 48 points. But still yet nothing great to talk of for them. I think they finished in the top 7 one time out of 10 seasons, so clearly nowhere near good enough. Well, in the Bundesliga, and I don't know how Al Ahly have survived in this season, they finished with just 28 points, just 2 points clear of Hamburg in second from bottom place. They should be getting relegated, that sort of points tally. Really poor from them. Only 6 wins in the season, however, they did survive just by winning in the playoff match against Hansa Rostock from the Bundesliga 2. They won 4-1 aggregate and they keep their place in the Bundesliga. But the last 4 seasons they've been very poor, Al Ahly, after a very strong start to life in Germany. Again, similar to last season, the transfer funds haven't been very big from these 4 Saudi Arabian clubs. Again, the biggest one was Al Hilal, which is £30 million spent on Noah Darvic from Lazio. So in season 10, we've seen our first domestic title win. That is Al Hilal, who have won the Premier League. I did think about stopping the experiment after 10 seasons, but after seeing Al Hilal win the Premier League, I decided to go forward another 5 seasons to see if they can win the Champions League. To be honest, at the moment, they seem like the only team likely to win the Champions League. Al Ittihad yet to win a competition. The other 2 not doing very well in their respective leagues anymore. They have won, both of them, a competition though, domestic cup competition. In season 11, can we see Al Hilal go further in the Champions League? And can we see Al Ittihad win their first competition? Well, into season 11, unfortunately, it was a pathetic title defence from Al Hilal in the Premier League. They won the league last season with 86 points, I think it was. But this season they finished as low as 5th in the league with just 72 points. 12 points off Tottenham, who won the league. They have qualified for a Champions League again. I think that's now 5 seasons in a row. How did they get on in the Champions League this season though? The best they've done so far is the semi-final. They have won the Europa League and got to another final. What have they done in the Champions League this season? Well, unfortunately, they got knocked out in the round of 16 by Tottenham, who of course won the Premier League as well. They lost 4-3 in aggregate to them. They did, however, win another competition though. They won the Carabao Cup, beating Brighton 3-2 in the final. And they also won the FA Cup, beating Brighton again 1-0 in the final. So Al Hilal didn't do too well in the league or the Champions League, but they've won another 2 competitions, beating Brighton in both finals as well. Devastating for them, but wow, Al Hilal are really coming on strong. 2 domestic cup competitions won for them this season, so they are really flying now in the experiment video here, Al Hilal. In La Liga, and unfortunately, Al Ittihad haven't qualified for a continental competition next season. They finished 7th in the league with 64 points. Valencia must have won the Spanish Cup. And in terms of the Europa League, again, they got to the round of 16 where they lost to Atlanta 4-2 on aggregate. So Al Ittihad have been quite disappointing so far in the continental competitions. They've qualified many times now, and I think 8 or 9 times out of 11 seasons, but I don't think they've got past the quarterfinal stage so far. So no one is really doing anything in the continental competitions apart from Al Hilal, who won another 2 competitions this season in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. Wow, hallelujah! In Serie A, and Al Nassr have qualified for a European competition again. They finished 8th in the league with just 60 points, but they qualified for the Europa Conference League. I think that's the first time any team is competing in the Europa Conference League. So maybe that's a big chance for them to win their second competition in the experiment for next season, Al Nassr. They've been slowly climbing the leagues the last couple of seasons. May they finish in the top 7 for next season? We shall see. And in the Bundesliga, I don't know what's happened to Al Ahly, but the last 5 seasons now, they're just surviving by the skin of their teeth in the Bundesliga. Again, they finished 15th in the league with just 34 points. So they really have fallen off a cliff, Al Ahly. What happened to them? They started off so well to the experiment here, but they really have fallen off a cliff. But thankfully, they're still yet to get relegated. But if any team will get relegated, it looks like it's going to be them. Well, in season 11, Al Hilal started to spend some money again. They bought Javier van Ankaren from Ajax for £50 million. Wow, he's a very good player, actually. It shows you how good their team is coming these days. He's on 400k a week, which is very expensive, but he is a class centre-back. So Al Hilal, by far the best team out of the four in the experiment here. They also signed Giovanni Solomeno from Real Madrid for £34 million as well, who is another very good defender, playing for Al Hilal, 120k a week for him. So after 11 seasons, Al Hilal running away with it in terms of the best Saudi club. They have won 2 more competitions this season, but we're still yet to see a team get to the Champions League final. They got the closest. They got to the semi-final. Can they get to the Champions League final in Season 12? In Season 12, Al Hilal came close to winning their second Premier League title, but unfortunately missed out just 4 points behind Man City in the end. But another Champions League finishing campaign for them, second in the league. It's becoming quite a familiar story for them playing in the Champions League. They're almost a guaranteed regular in that competition. Also, as you can see, the manager these days is Zinedine Zidane. Well, in terms of the Champions League, I did ask whether they could get to the final this season. They did get to the Champions League final, but unfortunately, they lost 3-1 to Arsenal in the final. But they're doing really well in Europe, Al Hilal. Of course, they've got to 3 European finals now. One Europa League, got to another Europa League final, lost the Champions League final as well. And they've got to a Champions League semi-final. And plus all the other competitions they have won so far. That's only the real competition they're missing now. They've won the league, they've won the FA Cup, they've won the Carabao Cup twice, and they've won the Europa League as well. So they're just missing the Champions League from the set. But unfortunately, no competition won for them this season. They did get to the Champions League final though. What about Al Ittihad? What are they doing? Well, surprise, surprise, they finished 5th in the league again with 69 points. It seems like an absolute guarantee Al Hilal will qualify for the Champions League and Al Ittihad will finish in the top 7. Have they won a competition yet, Al Ittihad? Oh, they got to another Spanish Cup final, but again they have lost it, this time to Barcelona 1-0. So that is actually their 3rd final they've got to, but they're still yet to win a competition, Al Ittihad, after 11 seasons now. After 12 seasons, sorry. In Serie A, Al Nassr still climbing the league. Well, not quite. They're down to 11th in the league this season with just 48 points. They also played in the Europa Conference League this season, but since it doesn't say they qualify for the Europa League, it seems that they haven't won that competition. Well, they got to the Europa Conference League quarter-final, but they did lose to Man United 4-2, so that is obviously quite a big team to face. Well, a massive team to face in the Europa Conference League, so can't complain about them too much. You look at the round difference here. Carabao in the round of 16, and then a massive jump to Man United in the quarter-final, so can't blame them too much. At least they've been playing European football again this season, but next season, unfortunately, they will not be. In the Bundesliga, Al Ahly are still struggling, but I think that's their highest finish now for like 6 or 7 seasons. Finished 12th in the league with just 41 points, but I think it's safe to say their European days are over. Well, another very quiet transfer window in Season 12, and no team has actually spent over £10 million on a player, so the money has dried up, but Al Hilal is continuing to do really well. They got to the Champions League final this season, but unfortunately they lost that. Can they go one further in Season 13, and can they win the competition? Well, in Season 13, Al Hilal again playing Champions League football for next season. They finished 4th in the league with just 69 points. Disappointing in the Champions League this season though. They got to the final last season, but this time round they got knocked out to Napoli very convincingly in the knockout playoff round. Again, 2 seasons in a row for them. They haven't won a competition, unfortunately. Well, Serie A is apparently the second biggest league now. So Al Nassr, again, have qualified for the Europa Conference League. So they are getting better, Al Nassr. They definitely started off as by far the worst team. But maybe they've overtaken Al Ahly now. Been terrible the last 6 or 7 seasons. 8th in the league for them. Only 50 points with a -6 goal difference. But they are playing in the Europa Conference League for next season. They got to the quarter-final last season when they lost to Man United, unfortunately. Can they go further for next season? Well, in terms of La Liga, Al Ittihad for another great season. They finished 3rd in the league this time round, so we're playing Champions League football again. Al Ittihad for next season, an absolute mile away from Barcelona first place, 101 points by the way, but 3rd in the league for them is very nice, and also top goal scorer in the league was Mohamed Ali Cho, who plays for Al Ittihad. Wow, they've got to their 4th final now, Al Ittihad. Their 3rd Spanish Cup final as well. But again, they've lost the final. So they're still without winning a competition in the experiment. Only 2 more seasons to go for them. Can they win one? We will see, won't we? But they lost 2-0 in the final to Real Madrid. I think it's worth noting they've had very tricky games in the finals. I think they played Barcelona twice and Real Madrid in all the Spanish Cup finals. I can't remember who they lost to in the Super Cup final, but they have, obviously it's a Spanish Cup, they've got some big teams in there, but they're still yet to win a competition, unfortunately. Well, in the Bundesliga, and Al Ahly have finally finished above 12th place. They finished 8th in the league with 48 points. Unfortunately, no continental competition for them next season, but that is definitely a step in the right direction. They've managed to stay in the league over all these seasons somehow, and now they're finally starting to grow in the league again. They also got to the German Cup semi-final as well, where they lost to Hanover 3-2, which is kind of disappointing. I'd like to see them get to the final with a team like Hanover in the semi-final, but all in all, has to be quite a positive season for them. 8th in the league and a German Cup semi-final, the way it's been going for them recently anyway. Well, in terms of big transfers, again, it goes to Al Hilal. They spent £53 million on Diego Gonzalez from Barcelona. So only 2 more seasons left to go in the experiment. Al Hilal have won everything they could have won so far, apart from the Champions League. And Al Ittihad are the only team yet to win a competition. Will one of those things change in Season 14? Oh my word, in Season 14, and Al Hilal have just missed out on the Premier League title. They are level on points with Man City and Tottenham, who finished 1st and 2nd. And also Chelsea finished in 4th place with 76 points. So what on earth sort of disgusting title race is that? It just missed out on their goal difference. Man City absolutely laughing right now, winning the league with just 77 points, which is disgraceful, by the way. How did they get on to the Champions League, though, Al Hilal? Well, unfortunately, they got knocked out in the round of 16 this time round. This time to Porto, 4-3 on aggregate. So only 1 season left to go to see if they can win the Champions League. It's definitely possible, but it does seem unlikely. They also came close in the Carabao Cup again. They got knocked out in the semi-final, this time to Bournemouth, which is very disappointing. And they also got to the FA Cup final again, but this time they lost on penalties to Chelsea. So another decent season for Al Hilal, but again, no trophy won in this season, unfortunately, and they just missed out on the Premier League on goal difference. Into Serie A now, and Al Nassr finished 10th in the league for this season with 44 points. So they've definitely improved over the experiment here, Al Nassr, but still nowhere near good enough, has to be said. And this time, absolutely terrible in the Europa Conference League. I gave them the benefit of the doubt 2 seasons ago, seeing as they got knocked down in the quarter-final by Man United, but this time, disgusting. They got knocked down in the knockout playoff round by Grasshoppers. Absolutely terrible from Al Nassr that. They should be going a lot further than that in the Europa Conference League. So yeah, they've been rather underwhelming so far in this experiment, Al Nassr. And only 1 season to go, it looks like they're going to end up as the worst team, well, joint worst team with Al Ahly. Into La Liga, and Al Ittihad finished 3rd in the league again with 76 points. Unfortunately, they're nowhere near close to winning the league title though, because Real Madrid and Barcelona are just way too strong. But Ali Cho again, top goal scorer in the league, this time with 22 goals. And finally, in Season 14, Al Ittihad have finally won a competition. They've done really well in their league finishes, a very consistent top 7 Spanish league team, but are yet to win a competition until this season. Not a major competition, but it is a competition. They have won the Super Cup, beating Real Madrid in the semi-final, and they beat Villarreal in the final. They also got knocked out in the Champions League round of 16 to PSG, unfortunately, and the Spanish Cup semi-final to Villarreal. But most importantly, they will not end up finishing the experiment trophyless. So no team has ended up trophyless, and Al Ittihad have finally won one, but they've done really well in the league throughout the experiment. Into Germany, and Al Ahly have certainly improved, that is for sure. They finished 10th this season with 43 points, so it looks like their relegation battles are over with, thankfully, but unfortunately they can't replicate their early great success by finishing in the Champions League places, or the top 7 at least. Disappointing from them. Well, in terms of the big money spent in Season 14, it has gone to the biggest club and the most successful club, Al Hilal. They spent £56 million on a guy called Alan Potton from Brighton. They also spent £44 million on wonder kid Archie Gray from Nottingham Forest, £44 million on Craig Lewis from Man City, and £43.5 million on Almadin Gudel from AC Milan, for £43.5 million. So only 1 more season to go in the experiment. Al Hilal being the most successful so far, winning the Europa League, a league title, 2 Carabao Cups and an FA Cup. They're yet to win the Champions League though. They have got to the final, and now Al Ittihad have won a Spanish Super Cup. So every team has won a competition, but none of them have won the big one. None of them won the Champions League. Can Al Hilal do it, or Al Ittihad, in the final season? Well, unfortunately, 1 season too much for Al Hilal, it seems, because they had a poor season. They're by far their worst season in a long time now. They finished 7th in the league, unfortunately, with 63 points. And they're not playing even Europa League football for next season. They're playing Europa Conference League football. Of course, we won't see their results for that. They're probably going to win the competition, to be honest. They've done very well in Europe so far. But yeah, very poor in terms of their league finish. Very poor indeed. Unfortunately, it was a poor end for them as well in all competitions. They got knocked down in the round of 16 in the Champions League, 5-2. to Benfica, so that was really disappointing. In terms of the Serie A, Al Nassr again not doing too much. They finished 9th in the league this season, just 6 points behind 7th place, but they haven't done really well in the experiment video here, Al Nassr. They haven't qualified for any Champions League to talk of, and I think they only qualified for the Europa League once. They did win one Italian Cup though, Al Nassr, so at least they won a competition in the experiment here. Into La Liga, how did Al Ittihad do? Again, they qualified for next season's Champions League. They finished 4th in the league. So in terms of league finishes, they have been the most consistent throughout the entire experiment. They've only won one competition though, the Spanish Super Cup. Did they win another one this season? Well, they got knocked down in the round of 16 as well in the Champions League, this by Dortmund 4-2 in aggregate. They also got knocked down in the Spanish Cup semi-final and the Super Cup semi-final as well. Into the Bundesliga, and Al Ahly with 11th place finish this time. So firmly a mid-table club these days, Al Ahly. At least they're staying in the league, but they're not doing much else, let's be honest. Again, in the last season though, Al Hilal only really the team spending big money out of the 4 clubs now. They bought Ty Clark from Newcastle for £82 million. They also signed Alejandro Meza from Cologne for £49 million. And they bought Luis Miguel Luis from Tottenham for £44.5 million. So that is the experiment over, guys. I think it's safe to say Al Hilal have been the best team in whole in terms of the experiment here. But in terms of league finishes, probably Al Ittihad have been the most successful. Most consistent, sorry. Al Hilal actually didn't start off too well to life in the Premier League. They finished 11th in the first season. They did qualify for the Europa League for the next season though. 10th in the third season. Didn't start off too well for them. 9th the following season, but then they started to grow. They finished 6th. 11th again, but they won the Europa League in that season, so they made up for it in 2029. And after that, it was a great run for them. They finished 4th in the league, then 5th, then 4th. Then they won the league title. They finished 5th again, 2nd, 4th, 3rd again, and the last season they were poor, finishing 7th in the league. But they have won quite a few competitions, Al Hilal. They're really well. They got to the Champions League final, of course, in 2035. They also won the Premier League once in 2033. They finished runner-up once and 3rd place once as well. They also won the FA Cup once and lost 3 other finals. They were runner-up in the UEFA Super Cup once. They won the Europa League once and got to a final as well. They won the Carabao Cup twice and got to the final 2 other occasions as well. And they also finished as runner-up in the Community Shield twice as well. So in total, they won 5 trophies in total, Al Hilal, in 15 seasons. 1 the league title, 1 FA Cup, 1 Europa League, and 2 Carabao Cups. So that is a lot more than the other 3. I think the other 3 only won 1 trophy each, but I'll confirm that in a second. So Al Hilal did really, really well in this experiment. They got to the Champions League final as well, but unfortunately, they missed out in the final hurdle there. Well, in terms of Al Nassr, they've probably been the most disappointing in terms of their league finishes. They started off poorly, 10th in the league. Then they finished 16th in the league, just surviving relegation there. In the 3rd season, they finished 10th, but they did win their first competition, the Italian Cup. Their highest finish, though, in 15 seasons was 7th place, Al Nassr. So they didn't really make a dent in the Italian Serie A, but again, they didn't get relegated from the Serie A, so they're definitely a firm Italian team. But I'd like to see them do a little bit better than finishing 7th in the league only, and a couple of 16th place finishes in there as well, and a 15th place finish. They did win one competition though. Early on in the experiment, they won the Italian Cup in 2026. They also lost the final in the first season in 2024, and the Italian Super Cup final as well. But at least they won a competition. They competed in Europe a couple of times as well. I think they competed in the Europa League once or twice, and the Europa Conference League twice, but they never really got past the quarter-final stage. So it has to be said they've been very underwhelming, but at least they won a competition, and at least they didn't get relegated. Well, in terms of Al Ittihad, they've been by far the most consistent in my opinion. Over the 15 years, they were the most consistent. They only finished outside the top 7 on 1 occasion out of 15 seasons. That was in the second season when they finished 8th in the league with 54 points. And only 2 seasons they failed to qualify for European competition. The other time they finished 7th, but Valencia won the Spanish Cup and took their place in the Europa League. But unfortunately, they couldn't really do too much in the Europa League or the Champions League. So that is disappointing. But in terms of consistency, very consistent in the La Liga. They finished 3rd place in La Liga 3 times, but it has to be said they were nowhere near close to winning the league title any of those occasions. They also finished runner-up in the Spanish Cup 3 times, 3 out of 4 seasons as well. They did, however, though, win 1 cup. They won the 1 Spanish Super Cup in 2037. So, in terms of trophies won, of course, they've been disappointing, Al Ittihad, but in terms of consistency, they were the most consistent team in their respective league. Well, in terms of the final team, Al Ahly, they started off as the best team, really. It started off really well in their league finishes, but it went down a cliff after that. Unfortunately, they didn't get relegated on any occasion, but they came very, very close. The first season they came 6th, then they came 4th, qualifying for the Champions League. They came 8th the season after that, then 3rd, qualifying for the Champions League again, then 8th again, then 5th, but after that they went really, really poor. They finished 15th, 13th, 13th, 16th, 15th, 12th, 8th, 10th, and then 11th. So the last 10 seasons, I think it was, they didn't finish in the top 7 any of those seasons, where in the first 5 seasons they qualified for the Champions League on 2 occasions. They did win one competition as well, though. They won the German Cup in 2027. They also finished 3rd in the Bundesliga that season as well, and was runner-up in the German Super Cup. So that was by far their best season. At least they won a competition as well. So 3 of the teams won one competition. Al Ittihad won the Spanish Super Cup, so couldn't win a major trophy, but Al Ahly won the German Cup, and Al Nassr won the Italian Cup as well. But Al Hilal won 5 competitions in total and got to a Champions League final as well. So they have to go down as the best team of the experiment, closely followed by Al Ittihad in terms of consistency in the league. But unfortunately, Al Ahly and Al Nassr were very disappointing, especially Al Nassr. So that is the end of this experiment video, guys. If you do like this style of video, please hit that like button for me. And also, if you're new around here and want to see more from me, do hit that subscribe button as well. It'd really help me out and it's much appreciated. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.